Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. Spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good.
Welcome, everybody, to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Is going to be a fantastic show tonight. We have coming back for the second time, Artemaeus Treadwell, along with Tillie Treadwell, his wife. It's going to be a fantastic show. They are experiencers and authors, investigators, experienced with a lot of different parts of the phenomena that we'll be jumping into tonight, because the phenomena is truly unexplainable. Let me go ahead and jump out in the chat and see who exactly has come on in first here tonight. We have, courtesy of Race Fan, looks like we have Kitty Catty Whack with the gold tonight. We have Race Fan with the silver, and Mel WD40 with the bronze, and he's getting his lubed up for the show. Fantastic. David Nornberg, thanks for coming on in, saying, hey, Rob, whatever happened to the 9 o'clock thing? Not sure exactly what you mean. I have your email there, so I'll reach out to you, Dave Nornberg. Let's see. We have... Who else is out here? I know we have others. We have Flat Six in the building. Thanks for coming on in. We have Roger Murray keeping us informed. August 1st, 1947, B-25 Mitchell bomber carrying piece of Maury Island UFO incident crash, Washington State. Thanks for keeping us informed, Roger Murray. Awesome as always. Who else is out there? Melissa Nicole, I see you as well. Kurt M. Hey, Kurt M., thanks for coming in. We have the Jaquetta. Hey, the Jaquetta, thanks for coming on in tonight. We have Tamothman. Hey, Tamothman, thanks for showing up here. We have Lars Jansen. Lars Jansen, thanks for coming on in. Brooke Michelle. Hey, Brooke Michelle, thanks for coming on in. We have D-Cypher. Hey, D-Cypher, thanks for showing up here at the show tonight. We have JSCO77 saying howdy. Howdy, JSCO77. Thanks for coming on in. Let's see. Getting down the list. Who else? AJ. AJ, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up. Magneticus Attractus. Appreciate you showing on up. Scott Rosen. Hey, Scott Rosen. Thanks for coming on in. Also, Jose Sanchez. Thanks for showing up tonight. Who else do we have? Can we get to the end? We may be able to. Hey, Amy. Appreciate you coming on in. Let's see. Kitty Catty White, get it started with the awesome super sticker. Thanks for your support of Spaced Out Radio. We also have, I did say Amy. We have Dookie Pickles. I always like saying that name. Dookie Pickles coming from X. Appreciate you showing on up to the show here tonight. And it looks like we are pretty current. We have Parasolo coming in almost at the buzzer. Appreciate you showing on up. We're going to go ahead and get ready to get the podcast side started, but not before I say what's up to Fast Timmy and then Bob Thor with another super sticker, getting it going early. Appreciate you guys. Let me start the podcast side right about now. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It's going to be a fantastic show. We have experiencers and authors in the building on the paranormal, on the phenomena, Artemaeus and Tillie Treadwell. We're going to be getting into conversation with them for hours 1 and 2. Then we'll jump into Steve Stockton Tells Untold, hour 3, and maybe some stuff that I figured out. I don't know. Let's go. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I am your host, Mr. Rob G. And tonight, we're broadcasting on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access our archives. They're absolutely free. YouTube.com/at Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SOR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot, and so much more. We're going to have a fantastic show here tonight. We have Artemaeus and Tillie Treadwell, experiencers, authors of the phenomena. We're going to get into that and a lot more here, so make sure you guys don't go anywhere tonight, because I promise it's going to be another awesome conversation, another awesome show as we get ready to bring our guest in for the night. We have Tillie Treadwell, Artemaeus Treadwell. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Doing very well.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Everybody, if you remember, not too long ago, we did have Artemaeus on with the conversation. We did not have Tillie on. Now we have Tillie here with us, so we're going to make sure that we get into finding out what brought her into the phenomenon. I guess that's a great place for us to start, Tillie. Going back early in life, what was the first sign? How did you even get into where you're at? And how did you end up meeting Artemaeus and coming here today?
Great questions. For me, I'm not so sure that I chose this life. I think that it chose me, because when I was a baby in the baby carrier, that's when I had my first experience, at least, according to my own memory. And then everything simply built from there. And now here I am. My earliest memory includes being taken up out of the little body vessel that I inhabit, presumably now, and meeting with someone who presented herself essentially as the moon. And at the time, I didn't know what was occurring, and it frightened me, and I was a baby, so I was crying, and she put me back, but she had thanked me for coming to Earth and said that I was quite brave to do so, and asked if there was anything that she could do to help me as I acclimate here. And I still don't quite know, honestly, what to make of that, but that's where it all began for me, Mr. Rob G. What do you make of that?
Oh, it sounds awesome to me. It sounds like potentially an abduction scenario. I don't know if that's what you consider it to be. We'll get to that, though. I want to get Artemaeus to jump in and refresh everyone your status. How did you get to where you're at here today as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Tillie and I have been in each other's orbit now for almost 10 years at this point. And, my life prior to Tillie was, I would say, rather average, typical human experience, and for the most part lacked much paranormal substance to it. My background was heavily educated in human psychology, animal behavior, human anatomy, that sort of angle, the very primitive and animal aspects of human experience, I guess you could say. So I came from that, and then, only slightly with an idea that there should be something more than what I had been, classically trained in at university, the average university. And that there are phenomena that I had started to hear about, that there has to be some other explanation for it. And searching in my education just couldn't find a reason. So by the time I met Tillie, this was, like I said, nearly 10 years ago. It was just starting to look, and we met because we were both on the dating scene looking for a relationship. And so we stumbled into one another that way. And among our first conversations was about ancient aliens, of all things, that kind of brought us together in a very surface way. And it just much further deepened from there.
I can imagine. What was that first conversation like? As far as phenomenon related, what was the first kind of deep conversation you guys had?
Yeah. So, gosh, I mean, it was the ancient alien stuff that we had. This was just via DMs, online. Bless Tillie, she wasn't going too deep with it. She just kept with, whatever we had seen on the TV. So, I'm assuming she didn't want to
scare them away too quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, didn't want to open up too fast, too soon. So, surface level stuff. So, nothing too terribly deep. Nothing happened until we decided to meet in person for the very first date. And even that started, relatively slow. But by the end of the night, we were having such a good conversation that we actually got locked in a mall. And we weren't trying to hide or anything like that, which was curious because, we were out in the open, just walking around with our cups of coffee talking. And it wasn't until we went to go leave that the security came out, because we were locked in. We couldn't actually get out. So we, got out, and I was getting ready to take her home. And that's when I would say the first mind-boggling experience, absolutely reality-shattering experience happened for me that Tillie actually herself facilitated. And when I tell this story, I the only way that I can liken the information that she gave to me was essentially describing to me what my soul essence was like. And she knew it, she saw it, and, she loved me for who I was outside of all of the masks and the ego and the character and the, everything that we play here on this planet for the stories and the experiences and, interpersonally. She just, immediately just pushed aside all of that like it was nothing. And then, reached in and told me these things about myself that I had never written them down, but it was like a deep knowing. And I was completely laid bare at that point. And, what she was saying just resonated so much and made so much sense to me that I felt seen on a level that I think some people would probably find terribly vulnerable and frightening, perhaps. But for me, it was a tremendous sigh of relief. And she gave me some validation with that experience, where, not just to give me this information that, she could have cold read me, like some supposed psychics do, just picking up on what she had, seen of me throughout the evening on this date. But she gave me this second piece of validating information, which is sort of her coup de grace. And that is that she said there was an entity presenting himself as a Native American chieftain, just called himself Chief, who was there to help facilitate this relationship that we were starting, because it was a soul contract and it was very important. And she proceeds to describe this individual in great detail. And while I don't think that I have any Native American in me, at least not with the genetic tests that I have done, my father was a collector of Native American memorabilia. And we had been gifted a portrait of a Native American chieftain that amazingly had been sitting on the wall, literally right outside my bedroom of our family home, that every day coming and going from my room, this individual was essentially watching over me. So essentially presented as a spirit guide, maybe guardian angel, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of words. People view them different ways, and I think they're all just names for the same thing. And whether or not this was actually a Native American chieftain, also, I think perhaps more of a mimic presenting itself that way to give a piece of information that Tillie could not have known because she'd never actually been to my family home before. So she gave me these, two pieces of information. And from that moment on, I was in awe and almost felt like I had no other choice than to listen, because it was precisely everything that I had been looking for, even if it was the first of that kind of experience I've ever had, and to such a profound level, to top it off. So that is where I was off to the races with her. But as Tillie said, she has had memories from even, Hun, you were also telling me that even before you came here, you've had memories of yourself as what you would call a floating pair of eyeballs that, was lurking in your grandmother's home from behind the clocks and peeking around, taking a look at what would be your future family. So yeah. She goes way back. I do not.
Well, let me ask you this, Tillie. So you end up early on. You read Artemaeus. It just blows his mind. He's totally shocked at the information that you're delivering. What prompted that in you? Like, what motivated you to come out and say that in that moment? And what kind of abilities are you tapping into when you do something like this?
I love those questions. I might need you to remind me of the second question,
Sure.
but I'll do my best to answer. So what prompted me to spring what I did on him, I could feel him for the first half of the date. It was awful. Like he did honestly treat me like garbage. He treated me like cold, stinky garbage and really didn't want much to do with me. And he thought he was doing me a favor by being there with me. But the more that I was just around him, I was getting input, visions, information, tidbits about him. And this is typically how it works for me. But these days, I don't use these abilities too much because the people here, I notice, tend to get really freaked out for the most part. I mean, there are some people who will come to me wanting me to give information and help, but most people don't want that. So I don't do that too much anymore. But to be honest, I was tired of the superficiality of the conversations that I was having with him, and I was tired of him acting, like he was better than me and whatever. And here I was seeing all of this information, and it just clicked that I wasn't dealing with the person that I came there to get to know. And that really bothers me. I don't like inauthenticity at all. I can't stand avoidant behavior. I can't stand any type of dishonesty, hiding, lying, running, anything like that. So avoidance really just irks me. And he was the king of avoidance at that point in his life. So I got tired of it, and I decided that after having that experience of getting locked in the mall with him, having the nice chit chat and feeling out that, yeah, there's something there, and we're having this decent surface level conversation that's now bordering on the deeper stuff, I just decided to go for it. And that if he didn't like me, then at that point, then I was willing to just walk away, because he wouldn't be a good fit for me anyway. And I've never been a pick me, and I'm not about to start. So I dropped it on him out in the car, just out of the blue, because I wanted to get a genuine reaction from him. And I did. And after that, I realized that even though I was giving him information that I could not possibly have known otherwise, I realized that there was still another piece that I could offer, and that was the person that called itself Chief. And Chief had told me, even showed me bits and pieces of the layout of his house. And mind you, please, that Artemaeus had never showed me any pictures of the house or anything. This was like the first meeting. And so we weren't even there. He didn't even like me. So he didn't have any reason to open up to me in that way. But Chief was giving me the lowdown on his family. Chief was whispering to me about Artemaeus himself. And then he was showing me the layout of the house and was telling me that he had been there for many, many years as a guardian of the family, and that the family was subconsciously looking for someone to disrupt the pattern and give them the opportunity to heal themselves. And so Chief was telling me it's going to take a long time. It's going to take anywhere between 8 and 25 years. And in some timelines, it's not even going to happen. But if you accept, the rewards will be at some point for you great in many different ways. And at minimum, Artemaeus is pretty much guaranteed to succeed because of the tie that he has to you. And I leapt in on faith with that information. I gave it to him and just waited to see his reaction. And his jaw dropped, and his face turned red. I can still remember the facial expression that he had, and he couldn't deny what I was saying. He kind of froze and then had a small meltdown, but I mean, here we are. He healed. He got over it. So I would say that it was the most interesting first date that I've ever had, or maybe even could ever hope for.
Yeah, because that could go both ways, right? Reading a person can go both ways. And you were going to say something, Artemaeus?
I was going to say probably the best whooping I've ever had. So,
so the second question I had, which you essentially sort of answered, was like, what ability do you feel like you're tapping into? And I'm assuming it's some sort of psychic ability. What do you consider it to be? And how would you explain it to someone who has no idea what we're talking about here?
Okay. I love that. I don't know that I'm psychic. I don't brand myself as a psychic. So please forgive me if I'm using terms that are completely foreign. I'll do my best. I believe that people's guardians, their demons, their angels, their ancestors, and their own subconscious minds / souls are talking to me. So a lot of the time, sometimes even when I just see someone, I can seem to pick up also lots of the ancestors or non-human entities, attachments of all different kinds. And then that person's subconscious or spirit or their soul will seem to talk to me directly too. Or it can be any type of those experiences. Artemaeus, honey, it might be a good idea to start talking about the different brainwave patterns that I'm documented to have, because I think that my different genetic wiring is also something that really allows me to do all of this. And I think that some of the information we're about to share publicly is going to change the entire human understanding of consciousness and even the medical paradigm that this society operates under.
Yeah. So I can definitely
go ahead, Artemaeus, get into it.
Yeah, sure. So I can take it from here. So this is kind of more of my wheelhouse, which is the human anatomy / neuroscience, that sort of thing. So we attended the Full Disclosure Now conference in St. Pete Beach a couple of weeks ago here, middle of July. And there were some individuals there who had tools available to measure brain waves, essentially, which was pretty cool. These are not, very expensive pieces of equipment that we were able to play with and test out a little bit. And Tillie had her brainwaves measured for a period of time, and then I had my brainwaves measured for a period of time for us to be able to compare. Now, Mind you, these two different sessions, I was sitting with my eyes closed and I had, earphones on with some, meditative sort of encouraging track running. So what I was attempting to do was reach alpha brain waves, which is what we would consider to be the meditative state. It's a calm state, but still, very conscious, functional, all those things. Beta brain waves, simplified version, would be the fight or flight state that people will get into when their emotions are heightened, right? And I would argue that most people are running in beta most of the time, even though they're not screaming at somebody or they're not feeling like they're angry. It's my understanding that that's actually the brain wave that they're operating in most of the time. And then you have theta brain waves, which are the twilight, the brain waves that are active between a total awake state and then a sleep state. And then delta brain waves are deep sleep brain waves. And then there's gamma, but we don't need to talk about gamma for the purposes of this conversation. And so I, in my meditation session, measuring brain waves, I had a little bit of beta activity going on, which is that, mental chatter, the monkey mind that goes on. But then I also was able to reach a significant portion of theta, which was interesting. And then a big spike in alpha, because I have learned now, because of that session, how to activate that. So that was neat to see. But Tillie's brainwave scans she did while she was actively talking to somebody. So no headphones or track or anything running. She was talking to the person who was actually running the test. And what they found was that she was running almost exclusively in delta, theta, and alpha, no beta whatsoever. And for somebody to be running in delta while they're perfectly conscious, conversing with somebody, is to this point in science practically unknown, because for the average person, they're in deep sleep when they're in delta. So the theory that I've kind of come up with at this point is that for those individuals who people might call psychics or intermediaries, or they have these capabilities to see and or communicate with or be communicated to from the paranormal, they are operating in a brainwave state that is vastly different than the average person. And it's like a radio frequency where these non-human entities, we'll just say all the paranormal, or even being able to plug in to what we call universal consciousness or source, happens on those other brain waves. And some people in alpha, you can reach that in meditation and you can get some things from that. But for somebody to be existing in theta and delta in a conscious state like that is almost like a pure connection stream of consciousness from that source to that brain. So that was an absolutely amazing finding that we got at the conference, to see those two distinct brain waves, difference in brain waves, and the activity that was being done, at each point. So yeah, there we are. Very big breaking news with that.
Yeah, that's actually pretty awesome. Yeah, go ahead, Tillie.
So to finish answering your question, my dear, I wanted to say that my differences, I think, are what power my so-called abilities. I don't know if this is what you guys would all call psychic. It just seems to be something inborn to me. And when I talk about seeing other kinds of people, which it seems like all the other types of people I've met and that I know are interdimensional, I was born with a different eye structure as well. So from tests that have been done on my eyes in years past, I seem to be able to see into a greater variety of wavelengths for light than what most other people can see. And it seems as though I have also a far more sensitive nervous system and hearing that can pick up certain tones that most other people cannot. And
that's
this
a good
is
place
why
to stop right there, Tillie. Let's I want to pick up on exactly where you left off on the other side of the break. Guys, this is going to be a great one. I can already tell. Sitting here with Artemaeus and Tillie Treadwell, getting into some deep conversation. Want to make sure you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. See you right back in just a moment. clear. And yeah, right where you left off, Tillie, that's exactly where I want to start when we come back. And let me see. We do have a few people out here that's come in late. Jerry Carter, thank you for coming on in. Appreciate you showing on up. Peaches Jones, appreciate you coming on in. Andrew and Gnomes Trucking Express, thank you for showing up. Paramore, I don't know if I said, hey, what's up to you earlier, but thanks for posting Artemaeus and Tillie's information in the chat. You're always on top of that. Let's see who else. Polly Rotterman coming all the way in from the other side of the world. Appreciate you showing on up here tonight. Let's see. Eversore, thank you for coming on in. Also, Pancho Zork, thanks for showing up. Who else? Anyone else sneak in? Miss Catherine Jones, I see you out there. Thanks for coming on in. Let's see who else showed up here after the buzzer. Let's see here. Bobby Broadway. Hey, Bobby Broadway, thanks for showing on up to the show. And I think that is it. Also, guys, I do see some questions that have come through already. They were in caps, which I do appreciate. So make sure any additional questions, please put in caps so I can see them. We'll post those at the end of hour number 2. Ian McFadden, I see you out there. Just snuck in. Laura Lobbs as well. Hey, Laura Lobbs. Appreciate you coming in. And yeah, so how have you guys been doing? I've been looking forward to the show. You know, we set this up a while back, so it's just been right there on the calendar. We just had Steve Bassett in last night, so we have you guys tonight. So it's been an awesome weekend. How has everything been outside of that?
Oh, it's been wonderful. I mean, we made partner for the Full Disclosure Now conference this year, and we've been invited to speak next year. We couldn't be happier with the outcome of that. And then with all of this new scientific research, soon we'll be posting the evidence and testimonials from the people who were able to be there and witness the live demonstration. And I think that 2025 is kind of our year. What do you think, Don?
Yeah, it was definitely a fire experience, and finally glad to have something concrete that we can bring to people, because that's, something that I like to bring to the paranormal experiences is some kind of tie to explain it, I guess, with the words and things that we have now, basically melding the science with the paranormal, or science as we know it, I guess, for whatever it's worth. And that does, for me, help to explain and, helps other people to understand, this, because when people talk about the paranormal, it can be kind of spooky, and they maybe will dismiss it as woo-woo because they don't believe or, whatever. But when you have, concrete things that you can show and say, hey, there's something really different going on here, and it helps to explain some of this, it takes away that dismissive reaction from people, and it also, I think, can allay some fears about the experience as well, because it's not quite such a mystery anymore. But yeah, I mean, we're totally excited now to be back on the show talking about this new stuff that we have. And I'm not complete in some ways when I don't have Tillie with me to support the stories and give her side. So it's always nice when we can finally, come together on a show and talk about this stuff from each of our perspectives. I think it's two sides of the same coin. So
what he said.
And it's true. It's true. You guys are a great match, and it's she picks up where you may lack. You pick up where she may lag. That's a beautiful union right there. So and it's effective when trying to get the message out there as well, being able to hear from both sides. So good work. The conference you're talking about, that's the one you said was in Florida?
Yeah, it was in St. Pete Beach, which is close to St. Petersburg. It's on the Gulf Coast, central-ish Florida.
Yeah. I want to get down. I still haven't been to any conference at all the ones that, and I'm going to make it my goal to go to one So I may have to put your conference on my calendar
There you
and
go.
come out and hear you guys talk. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
We would love to have you because we plan on sharing the stage together and sharing some of our favorite true stories from living in a very haunted home, essentially, wherever we go. And then, of course, answering any questions about disclosure and our experiences. And, there might be a small dance party involved. You never know.
That's what I'm talking about. I want to, we got 15 seconds before we come back. Eversor wants to let you know, Tillie, beautiful hair, Tillie, beautiful hair.
Oh, thank you very much. It is an epic mane, isn't it?
Yeah, this is definitely a hair channel as well. So coming back here in about 2 seconds, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We are back with Artemaeus and Tillie Treadwell, getting into some really deep. It's already deep. The conversation is deep. I'm telling you, if you missed any of it so far, jump in the archive. Absolutely free. YouTube.com/@SpacedOutRadio. As we go ahead and get ready to get back into the conversation, Tillie, you were saying something towards the end of the break there. If you want to go ahead and pick up from there, that would be great.
I'm sure I was saying something, and it's gone.
I got you, bud.
You got it? Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, you were talking about your eye structure being different, being able to see different waves of light than the average person.
That was true, yes. And my nervous system is recorded to be a lot more sensitive often than the people around me, and same with certain aspects of my hearing. As well, I was born with what did they call it? Medically anomalous porphyria, MAP. So I have the rarest type of what you could call is porphyria. It's only activated by sunlight. I'm working with genetic specialists behind the scenes with a brand new treatment that I discovered last year when I was doing research for another genetic condition that I was born with, and I stumbled across this, and now here I am with that. But all of this to say, there are a lot of physical differences that I think play into allow me to interact with other types of people through the veil and to speak to a person's subconscious and their soul. As well, when I'm talking about the subconscious and the soul and the spirit, that is not at all the same as the ego presentation of someone. So, Rob, I mean, I think there's a lot of coherence there from what I'm picking up, but you're still not the same what you're presenting now to me and to the public, and of course to Artemaeus. I mean, of course, we're on camera and this is a job for you, but everyone here, for the most part, has that type of an ego mask, and it's not the same as what lies underneath. And I'm always trying to talk to the spirit and the soul underneath, and I'm still honestly learning how to deal with the ego presentations and understanding, you could say, the human animal. So that's been a massive ongoing challenge for me. And sometimes people say, oh, if I was psychic, it would make everything so much easier. That's not been the case for me. It's actually made things a whole lot worse because it scares a lot of people, or because I'll say things and they're not going to see what I'm talking about until days, weeks, months, sometimes years later. And by then they've already written me off as a kook, blocked me, sometimes tried to ruin my reputation or other opportunities. So it's a completely different world that I have to jump in between, and being psychic doesn't make it easier. So this is why I have this guy over here to help me socially translate and whatnot when I'm hanging out with you guys more in the physical realm, if that makes sense.
Trained in and grown up professional in narcissism and ego presentations. So
Right. Right.
That is epic. That is so epic. And what it sounds like when you talk about being able to access these different states at the same time, these are like meditative states and things you would normally have to some people have to do things like use ayahuasca or just different methods that they do to access that sort of that state, but you're able to access it freely, which I think is pretty cool. And I don't know if other people could be trained to do so. I kind of tend to believe that we can, because it feels like we have more than just the five senses. We have all these other abilities that we have not fully tapped into yet. It just sounds like you may be more open, already open to a lot of the things that we're able to do. So I would wonder then, what is your in both of your ideas or definitions of consciousness then? Like, how do you perceive consciousness? How would you explain it?
Great question. You're a smart cookie, Rob. You had a lot of good observations in there that some people never come around to. So kudos to you. But go ahead, hon. You got your idea of consciousness.
Sure. I would describe consciousness in one word, and I would adapt that word to whomever I'm speaking to. So for me, I would call it God or source. And so if I'm speaking to Rob, probably would call it God. If I'm speaking to you, honey, I would call it source. But I think that consciousness is the end all be all. That awareness is God.
Okay. And how about you, Artemaeus?
Yeah, which is why I wanted her to go first, because I was super curious what she was going to say. Because, of course, my viewpoint on consciousness was probably going to take a completely different definition, and probably would have been far off from the actual topic at hand. So consciousness, yeah. I think I can kind of agree with her that, when we talk about, well, see, this is the funny thing. This is what humans and their egos and their viewpoints do, because when she says consciousness is just that pure stream, that omnipresent, omnipotent, consciousness, God knows everything, can do everything, can see everything. It's just pure consciousness. That's when I think when people, like the average person, maybe someone like me, would have said, oh, consciousness, it is your ability to perceive the world around you. You are conscious, you are awake, a very human viewpoint, I suppose, of perception, essentially. And so it would be, I would have to ask you, Rob, perhaps what you meant by consciousness, because this is what's difficult. This is a perfect example, actually, of the difficulties that Tillie deals with when she's trying to communicate with somebody versus, the average person's knowledge of what people think words are versus perhaps what they actually are, literal definitions, or, the accepted universal definition of something. So when she tries to communicate with someone, she's using words that people have completely different definitions for.
Yep.
And lost in translation. Even if you're speaking English, it is so easy to misunderstand. So yeah, consciousness for me, goodness. Yeah, I'd have to agree with Tillie that I think that the standard universal definition for that should be, the source, pure, omnipotent. What would you call that, dear? Observation, perception, being, maybe? It's just a state of energetic being? No. Say
no. For me, it would just be awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But even with what you're saying, I think I see what you're getting at, but I think that we're coming at it from two different layers. So some of the stuff that you were saying seems to be a lot more earth and ego based.
Right.
But for me, I'm talking about any modicum of consciousness or awareness in anything, anywhere, in any dimension, in any density, or even outside of time space itself. I think it is all the same source.
So it would be, I think, therefore I am. Is that kind of what you're getting at? The awareness that it exists is consciousness.
Perhaps. I think, therefore, I think, therefore, I create. I think, therefore, I destroy. I think, therefore, I am. I think, therefore, I eat. I think, therefore, I sleep. I think, therefore, I kill. I think, therefore, I comfort.
Yeah.
I think, therefore, I will.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Cool. I love it. I'm sitting back, and this is what I'm sure plays out off camera when you guys are having
all the time.
It's beautiful to see. So, and I agree. And the reason why I ask those questions is because in this genre that we're in, there are jargon, what we consider jargon. We understand what the definition of consciousness is within the community. But for someone on the outside, as you were saying, Artemaeus, the word itself can take on different meanings, and someone not from the community will think of consciousness in a totally different way. But I think the definition you both gave is pretty much with what we're kind of talking about within the community. I look at it as essentially the source energy, which I think runs through everything from one end of the universe to the other. And that our consciousness are like fingers off of the source. So like fingers of the source that kind of reach down and animate all of us and make us who we are. So it is essentially the same thing you guys just said. But when we talk about this, because it sounds like Tillie was introduced to or opened up to, the phenomena or these abilities maybe before you, Artemaeus. So when you guys get together and you see where her mind is at, how does that affect you? How does that change you? And like where have you gone since that initial conversation that you've had?
Dude, I am out of this galaxy now after meeting Tillie. Like I thought that I had things pretty well understood, but damn, I basically just had my nose in the dirt, was about as far as I got. So yeah, I mean, she has completely blown out my, the world view, the fishbowl essentially that I was living in now to, it's like I said, it's been about a decade and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, difficulty in breaking free of that mental construction that, I mean, you could very well call it a cage because that's essentially what it was. And a lot of work that went into breaking that open to do what it is that we do even just now on camera, which is to be able to discuss topics back and forth. She'll bring up something that I may have had some preconceived notion about, judgments or like demons, for example. That's one word that just popped into my mind, that a lot of people will have a particular judgment about what they're doing, who they are, their intent, tell all these, stories about these entities that, from what I understand after listening to Tillie talk about her work as an exorcist, could not be further from the experience that she's had. I won't say the truth because we don't know what that is. But in getting this exposure to her, I joke often that I now have a PhD in Tillie because it took me an awful long time to to really wrap my brain around just how different her worldview is and her experiences, not just because of the, masculine and feminine, but literally a different brain. We can even talk about how men's brains and women's, males and female brains, they, light up differently. They use different parts of their brain. There's different strengths and focuses. Generally, it's the same brain. It just generally operates a little bit differently, but that's not even the case here. It is literally a brain that is using completely different brain waves to operate, and then everything that comes with that, which, I mean, we could get into some of the general axioms or tenets that she operates by, her worldview, how things are just so much different that, I mean, I joked, it is like dealing with an alien because it's just so foreign to me and the average person with had a massive ego, to somebody who is literally completely opposite of that. Very low ego, very objective, no judgment, no mental chatter going on, and just very pro-social, pro-cooperative with no exception. I would say no survival instinct either, because it was very stressful in the beginning, as somebody trying to protect my other half, as men often do with women, that she would get herself into some situations where I was like, oh, no, we don't do that. That's not safe. But in her mind, it was, I just love, I love, that's it. There was nothing else. So, we, there's a lot of benefit that we can get from that, and certainly an amazing amount that I have gotten just from daily exposure to somebody like this. It is, as Tillie said earlier, it's being a psychic or intermediary or somebody like that is not always cracked up as what it's cracked up to be in this particular reality. It's it's a mixed bag. So.
Right. And a lot of people in some circles, they revere me as a teacher of personal transformation and healing. But other people, they're not ready for the things that I understand and that I have to say. And this is okay with me. It's just that they see me as the villain. They see me as the demon or the antagonist. And that's kind of how Artemaeus and his family saw me for a number of years, until their own egos began to dissolve under the pressure of themselves.
Can you explain that? Why that view would have been that way?
Why I would have been a massive ego jerk? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, why is the perception that way? Why was
so just so I understand your question, why did I have a massive ego?
Yeah, she said that you guys kind of had a particular view of her at that point in time, and so what was the reasoning for that, or kind of explain what that was?
Yeah,
why
absolutely.
Why did you guys think I was evil, honey?
Yeah. So okay. So, I mean, with the way that I grew up, my father was a Marine and my mother was a teenager when I was born, essentially. So you could say the emotional intelligence between the two of them was probably tantamount to a 5-year-old, if that. So, when you grow up in a situation like that, as a child, if you don't have parents that are available to tend to your emotional needs, essentially, and teach you how to regulate your own emotions, you will develop defense mechanisms. And for some people, they'll go the route of people pleasing. For other people like me, who have, I think this is just genetic tendency, there's nature and nurture. It's not nature versus nurture. They go together. And for me, I just went the route of, okay, I'm just going to be, the big baddie who can, I can take care of myself. I can protect myself, and I'm good enough. And, I don't need anybody else, and everybody else is beneath me, and yada, yada, yada. But what's underneath that is somebody that's quite sensitive, actually. And so, I was kind of the golden child in the family, the oldest of 3, and my parents definitely favored me. You could say that, and that also pumps up a kid in some ways, but there's a tremendous amount of pressure with that. And when you have a favorite child, anybody that comes into the family from the outside, this gets into the average human ego with tribalism and dual, anything on the outside is enemy unless you are on the inside. That's our tribe. So her coming in from the outside, even though this was somebody that, it was so interesting. It was this, back and forth internal battle with me, this love-hate, because I had this very deep root knowing that, I wanted to be with her the rest of my life, but I was constant, this, soul connection, but I was constantly fighting with the ego construction on the top, which is, I don't like that she's just so happy all the time. She's an airhead. She's not connected to this earth. What am I going to do with somebody that can't help me survive and do this and do that? Yada, yada, that ego talk that's very earth-based, fighting with the soul recognition, the thing that's underneath all of that, which is so much more powerful, which is why, I kept the relationship around. But bless Tillie, she she didn't know any better really at the time on how to deal with that. So she stuck around through that. And thank God I got my crap together soon enough before she decided, forget this is too much work. But, I eventually, we moved away from my nuclear family because they, seeing her as somebody from the outside, noticed that she was having a pretty massive impact on my relationship with this family that was, we'll just say, toxically enmeshed. These are therapeutic terms that some people may have some knowledge about if they know about narcissistic dynamics and, family enmeshment and what's proper as far as self-differentiation growing up as an individual away from, the family dynamic, becoming your own self. So they saw her as essentially the home wrecker, the disruptor to their golden child. So I decided executively about less than a year into the relationship to break away from the family. And that's how we ended up moving all the way to Florida, 1,000 miles away, essentially, from where we were, to really double down and try to get better myself, and then also to break away from that construction, what people will call generational trauma, entrenched within that family structure. And so, yeah, they did not like her, but I had the soul tie, which was enough to, continue to chip away at that ego that kept saying all the stuff that, made me think that I didn't like her, or that, as she mentioned, had me treating her unfortunately, like trash in the beginning. I laugh about it now because it's so cringy that if I don't laugh about it, I might just feel awful. But I have felt awful about it over the years, anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
But to answer the question a little bit more directly, his mama saw me as a competition, essentially, and his one sibling. A lot of people in the family, they thought that I was just evil because I'm different, and they couldn't understand my thought processes, and I didn't, I wasn't in line with all of the really dangerous and harmful and mean stuff that they were doing to each other and to me and to him. So word got around that I was, a horrible person and I was a gold digger and all this. And his one sibling threatened my life and said that everyone hates me, and if I don't disappear, they're going to make me disappear. So, threatening to kill me. And 2 months after that, we dropped everything and moved to Florida together to start over completely. And since then, a lot has changed. His mom has come around a lot. A lot of the things that I predicted over the years have come true, and they're realizing, some of them, that I'm not the bad guy. I'm not here to hurt anyone or, to haunt anyone unless I'm backed into a corner. And so we've made amends in that way. We've got a fantastic vacation planned for the holidays, and all is well, at least with, the parental units. So there is a happy ending with Artemaeus and I, and then also with certain factions of his family, which I think in itself, honestly, is a complete miracle. So,
yeah, healing generational trauma with paranormal experiences. That's not something that you hear every day.
And I'm all about that. That's my whole mission, you could say.
Phenomena is a crazy thing, and love conquers all. And it's a beautiful thing. It's definitely a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad that you went ahead and shared that with us. We are getting right up to the top of the hour already. I can't believe this is going so fast here. So what we're going to do is go ahead and take a 5-minute break. We're going to be off camera, and I want to come back and I want to talk phenomena, because earlier in the conversation you did talk about what to me sounded like maybe an abduction tale. I don't know. I'll have you explain that, but we'll go ahead and get into that and a lot more. Guys, make sure you get all of your questions in. I do have a few of those, and we will also be posing those in hour 2. We'll be right back right here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. See you in about 5 minutes.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the
You're
needle.
listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we are clear and we're off camera for 5 minutes. See you guys back here in a minute.
Thank you, Rob G.
All right, take care. All right, welcome back, Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, bringing our guests back up on the screen here. And we are coming back from radio in about 30 seconds here. Once again, guys, please just make sure you put your questions in all caps so I can grab them for our guests tonight. And let me see here. Galactic Family Podcast. Yeah, if you email me those coordinates to mrrobg@gmail.com, that would be awesome. Now I can check them out, maybe bring them up in hour 3. Here we go. All right, I'll fix that. 905. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We are in After Hour number 2, back with our guests, Tillie and Artemaeus Treadwell, experiencers of the phenomena, which we'll be jumping into what parts of the phenomena this hour. Also getting into your questions, so make sure you don't go anywhere. It's going to be an awesome hour 2 right here on Spaced Out Radio. As we go ahead and jump right back into this. So right before the break, Tillie, I was asking about earlier in the conversation, you talked about an experience that sounded like maybe extraterrestrial related, maybe an abduction. Could you talk about that experience in detail and what you think it was?
Absolutely. I want to say somewhere between, I don't know, 3-6 months old, and I was in a little baby carrier. If you all remember what the baby carriers were like in the 1990s, in the 1990s, they would have a little handle, and they would also double as a little rocker for the baby. And I was in one of those at one of my relatives' houses. I learned later it was one of my aunt's houses. And I was wrapped in a soft blue blanket, which, actually, it was about the same color as this. And I was cozy and content, and I didn't understand any English at that point. So I was just a baby with my pacifier wrapped and staring at the ceiling, doing whatever babies do at that point, really. And before I understood what happened, I was suddenly not here anymore. I was taken up. And this was not a physical encounter as we would say here, but I personally do still think it was real. There was this giant, in comparison, moon woman. So you know the full moon, of course, everyone does. But it had a beautiful, gigantic face with these massive eyes, massive, somewhat dark, feminine eyes, and, a nose and a mouth. And she was talking to me, but her lips didn't move or anything like that. It was mind to mind communication. And I would say now that it was in English, but that's not quite right either. It was just, she was like putting directly into my mind the concepts that she wanted me to have, to understand. And I don't know who this person might have been, to be honest, because who talks to a baby? Babies don't understand language or communication like what she was giving me. And so she seemed kind of surprised that I didn't answer her. I just started to cry because I didn't know what was going on. She was absolutely huge compared to me, and I was too intimidated to be able to answer, even if I could. So then all of a sudden I was like dropped back down into my body, and I remember spitting out my pacifier and struggling against my blanket and just crying and screaming. And my mother picked me up and she was like, I have no idea what is going on. You know, what's wrong? And no amount of soothing or rocking or anything, no giving me a bottle, anything would work. I just cried and cried and cried until I went to sleep. And I've remembered this encounter for the rest of my life, but only as I've gotten older have I been able to put the language pieces together to understand what that encounter was about and to remember some of the actual language that this person was using mind to mind. Wasn't it an abduction? I think that many people would call it such. I personally, I don't call it an abduction. I call it a borrowing. And I personally don't really subscribe to the idea of abductions in the emotional and ego sense that a lot of other people around me tend to do. So for me, I tend to look at it from a really detached place comparatively. So part of the paranormal counseling that I would often give people is a type of reframing, like radical reframing. If someone is taken by an alien, for example, a lot of people around me would be absolutely horrified and upset. But for me, I say, okay, this thing seems to have just happened. And now there are pros and cons that can come with it for you moving forward. Let's see what we can do with this experience instead of just calling it good or bad or, you know, whatever the case may be. So I've never seen it as a purely negative experience at all. I just say, like, this person borrowed me for a little bit, and now what do I want to do with that experience? And that's really about it on my part. I look forward to your feedback, though. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it could go a few different ways. I was feeling a little bit of astral travel in there, maybe also potentially abduction. I'm feeling a little bit of both of those, especially when you talk about being put back in your body. Some people say that with the abduction phenomena that sometimes you are physically abducted, but then sometimes just your consciousness is abducted. So it rides the line there. When you hear this, Artemaeus, what goes through your mind? Like, the first time you heard this from her, what went through your mind? What did you think it was, or what do you think it is now? If your perspective.
Yeah, good question. So I, as she has shared her experiences, you know, with this kind of thing over the years, because she's also talked about a similar experience to what people in the telepathy tapes have talked about. So for any of your listeners, honey, what's the person's name? Kai
Dickens.
Dickens, that's right. So there's an individual that put out this series of anecdotes, essentially, from individuals. The series is called the Telepathy Tapes, and it's mostly from neurodivergent people. So as we described earlier in the show, people who measurably have, you know, different brain waves that they are operating in. These people often share similar experiences in that they are able to visit other places essentially in their mind, or what, Rob G, you might call astral travel, essentially. And, you know, as she has shared this story with me, and, you know, other experiences of hers where she has gone essentially out of body, I guess you could say, her consciousness gone elsewhere, that is what I have related it to. And that because all of her paranormal experiences generally with interdimensional beings are positive, and we can get into more of that later, you know, if there's time, that this individual that presented itself as the moon was just someone, perhaps part of her soul family, you know, her soul grouping, that was attempting to give her some encouragement at a time when perhaps she wasn't quite able to assimilate it, but that eventually began to make sense. I after exposure to Tillie and all of the paranormal beings, interdimensional being experiences, I tend to look at them all with more of a positive spin than some others who tend to label them more negatively, whereas the word abduction tends to come loaded with the feelings of it's against my will, it's a frightening experience, it's loaded with all of that feeling. I do not view it that way. Yeah, so I don't know if that makes much sense, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what I got.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it, so with that being said, I kind of want to jump into some of the things that you get into, Tillie. So I read here that you've done things with the Catholic Church as far as exorcisms go.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be awesome to hear about. Also, tarot reading and mediumship. How do how does being involved with or utilizing these abilities, do they intersect, and maybe tell us a story or two about some of the things that you dealt with, especially with the exorcisms within the Catholic Church?
Sure. Well, I was part of an exorcist team here in America for about a year. I separated after that because it became clear that our understandings and our morals just they were too different, and our goals were too different. So with my neurodivergence, I am diagnosed as being level 1 autistic, which is the most high functioning. But then I also am clinically diagnosed with natural or organic, you could say, low ego content and low emotional content. Because of this, I'm not a fan of religion. I tend to be extremely cold, quote unquote, and logical. And I tend to hold empathy for all parties, essentially, up to a certain point, anyways. I draw the lines at things like, avoidance and dishonesty that's not based on survival, but that's a different, perhaps, philosophy for another time. Before I separated, though, when they brought me on, I was scouted originally because I was known in the area to be a great psychic, healer, and tarot card reader. I joined at the individual invitation from the church, and originally I was just going to be kind of like a psychic scout on the exorcism cases, but with also my background in trauma counseling training. So I was originally going to be a psychologist, a trauma specialist, and also I decided that that wasn't quite the path for me, and now I certainly understand why. But I was able to use a lot of that training for the cases at the Catholic Church's behest. And it became clear to them that I was far more useful than just being a psychic scout, than just scanning for ghosts and non-human people. But what they didn't quite expect is my neurodivergence. And so the empathy that I have at a core level for literally everyone and everyone, humans and non-human alike, meant that I wasn't going into these situations where I was in line with their moral code, which is to bring people further into the Catholic religion and to further so-called demonize, the demons or the fairies, whoever else was there. And that did cause a lot of tension. The demons, though, and the fairies, the elementals, I had a lot less problems with them than I did with humankind. In fact, I would say that almost all of my problems I've ever had, it's been with human beings instead of the other non-human people. So when I tell these true stories, please keep that in mind. It may be opposite to your ego, and I'm not trying to offend. All of that out of the way, one of my first cases, let's just call them like Bob and Kathy or something. Bob and Kathy were a married couple, and they were longtime part of the local Catholic church scene. They had a teenage son. He was about 14 years old. And from the outside, this family looked to be spotless, just absolutely were pillars of the church, pillars of the community. And their household started to come down with some what they said to be was concerning paranormal activity. Their crucifixes, started coming off of the walls, pictures started falling off, objects, just other random objects moving. There were, a shadow person, at least one of them in the house, and there were reports of like voices coming from certain rooms. And it just got to a point that they reached out to the Catholic Church for help. And the church reached out to our group because we had a long-standing, deep connection with them. And when we got there, I was building my own protocol. So the rest of my teammates, they handled all of the really cool, the gadgets and the gears and whatnot, and they'd be scanning and doing all of the fun and geek out kind of thing. And I would just be wandering. I would be searching the perimeter, putting out my feelers for anyone who was there, a human spirit or anyone really. I'm like, hey, I'm Tillie. I'm here to help everyone. That includes you. And I'd like to have a chat. So if you are able and willing, I would just like to hear your side of this and see what kind of a deal we could broker between both sides for you guys. I was doing that. I was making my rounds around the house, and I think it was like one of the back rooms, or it was a bedroom or something. There was indeed the so-called demon, and he, she, they, they have even less ego than me. So they just kind of, a lot of them just go by it or they, to be honest. So not to freak anyone out, but I'll just call the demon it from here on out. It said that it was willing to talk to me because I wasn't there to make it out to be the bad guy in this situation. And what it told me absolutely blew my mind. It said that the family was a bunch of, unfortunately, very lying, dishonest, abusive people, and that the mother was a day drinker who had racked up a few DUIs already and was still, at it in that way, and that the father, he hated his job, he hated the community, he was just putting on a show, essentially, and that he would come home miserable and, had anger problems and whatnot. And the son, unfortunately, had been, physically and, mentally and emotionally abused, and it was just honestly a house of misery, is what it told me. And it said that unless they change their ways, their, lying and abusive ways, it was not going to leave because it's a contract. So those people were behaving in those ways, and that set the contract for it to come in and feed off of that energy. It then proceeded to tell me that there are all kinds of symbiotic and semi-symbiotic non-human people who feed off of whatever human beings are putting out. And so it proceeded to tell me that human beings actually set the contract for non-human people. And this is also what Artemaeus was talking about in part. And in every case that I've worked, this seems to be exactly true. So the so-called phenomena, these non-human people, they adapt to what human beings expect, demand, need, or desire to see. And they will have some type of collaboration internally where what the human being is expecting, needing, wanting to see, etc., meets what the non-human person can get from the situation and what that non-human person actually wants to do in that situation. And it all comes together to form a plan for that non-human person, and they personalize it for the human being in question, and or the family unit in question. So that's why human beings can have seemingly innocent poltergeistic type activity that starts, and then it'll ramp up in a really dangerous negative way towards some parts of the family. But then there are other parts of the family, other individuals, where this non-human person, it acts a lot more like a guardian angel even, or a good friend, and protects them from the other abusive aspects of the family. So this is what this non-human person taught me, and it was repeated in several other cases that I worked over that year, and even in a lot of other personal encounters that I've had outside of the Catholic Church. This exact same formula has just been repeated over and over and over again amongst different types of non-human presentations that I've encountered. So at this point, I believe it to be true. You can even see this behavior in cases back, like the Bell Witch and Jeff the Talking Mongoose, if you read the stories. So human beings set the stage. What you guys put out is exactly what you guys will get back from non-human people. So after I talked to this person, I went back, and in my innocence, I didn't realize that just spilling the tea essentially was going to be such a big deal. I don't have that self-protectiveness like Artemaeus was talking about. So for me, it's not a problem to admit that I messed up or that I have some kind of issue. But for these guys, it was like someone just set off a bomb in the kitchen. The mom just lost her mind. She started screaming and cursing. She was calling me names, saying that I wasn't telling the truth, and that there's no way I could be associated with God or the Catholic Church, and that I had to be a fraud because I was saying what I was told. The husband just sat there, and he just looked so broken and ashamed at that kitchen table. It was bizarre. There was like a fresh baked plate of cookies that the mom had made, and there were like, the little glasses of tea and coffee and milk and whatnot. So it was so strange to have everything explode like that. And the dad just like hung his head and he started to cry. And then the son was standing off in the corner of the kitchen, and he just looked up in the middle of the chaos when there was just a break, and he's like, "Mom, it's true." And on the way out, because she picked up a crucifix and she threw it at me as hard as she could, and she hit me with it. I had a nasty bruise for a hot minute. And so we, quickly just collected all the gear. One of the guys got on the phone with the father of the church and was like, "Hey, we can't do this case. This is not what it seems at all." And charges, I think, were almost pressed at one point, and they were put on the blacklist. But on the way out, the demon was in the hallway corner right near the wall. He was hiding in the shadow, and it looked at me, and he's like, "I told you so." And that was my introduction to demonology.
Just blowing minds with that one there. That is scary, deep, and all the above. We're actually going into our final break of the night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Guys, make sure you don't go anywhere. We're going to be back. We only have 20-30 minutes left with the guests, but it's going to be fantastic. So make sure you don't go anywhere. If you leave, make sure you come right back. We'll be back right after the break. right, we are clear, and yeah, woo, that is heavy right there. That is so deep. And so I have a question to ask you after we come back. That kind of goes off of that, and then definitely want to hear from Artemaeus, because I know you've had some experiences yourself. So, and we have questions coming up. Man, this is going to be a great end to the show here. And then I got to have you guys back, man. You guys are awesome. So
Thank you. Yeah,
we have to do this again for sure.
cool.
I would love to come back. I'm so glad that you had us on, Rob.
Man, you guys, you're perfect. You're like the exact type of guest that I love to have. Very intellectual, can talk to the phenomenon. This conversation, I feel like, moves the needle. So it fits my little world really nice. So I love it, and we'll definitely be doing it again.
Awesome. You know, I think it would be really fun to do some kind of Halloween show.
Yeah, you want to do
Yeah.
this? This is we got August, September, October. We'll set the date. Let me check the calendar real quick.
Cool.
I love that. Yeah.
Halloween falls on a Friday, so I guess we can do the weekend before.
Yeah.
So 25th,
Sure.
26th. Which day is good for you guys? Saturday or Sunday?
That's a good question. I think we've actually got a show scheduled for, and the 25th is ringing a bell earlier in the day. So
It's the 26th. We have one.
is it? Okay.
I swear it is. And then we have the Halloween party on the 30th.
Yeah, we're just doing the weekend before. So, I mean, if it is that Sunday, dear, then we could probably we'll do Rob's show, so we'll have 2 shows in one day then. So, if you want to do
Sunday.
I'm fine with that as long as my health is holding up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
let me pencil that in right now. Let me see.
Yeah, please. This is awesome.
Yeah, definitely is going to be. You guys are. You talked about the Bell Witch, and it just rung a bell for me because I actually did a Halloween show last year, and we talked about the Bell Witch amongst other things. So it's always synchronicity, man. It's just crazy. And my guy Trebecky, who is usually here, he's kind of opened my eyes up to a lot of things around our circle that line up for whatever reason, and this is just another one of those things. So
100%. And I was getting the nudge to mention the Bell Witch to you directly and to then suggest some kind of association with Halloween in a short amount of time, because apparently that was going to ring a bell, as you said, for you, and then trigger a timeline where we could set a Halloween show. And that's what I was going for.
That's heavy. That's heavy right there. Hey, I'm totally with it. That's heavy, and it works that way. It does. Whatever that is, it definitely is a thing, and it definitely does work in that fashion. That is so bananas. I'm glad that you explained that here.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Shout out to Bigfoot Michigan Rob. Thanks for your awesome support of the show here tonight with the super chat. Also, Richard Minnick, appreciate it. Saying awesome show, mind blowing, love it. That's what it has to be. It can be nothing less. That's why we do this. You got to walk away with something by the end of the show. That's just what it has to be. Adventures with Beth saying, "Hey Rob, thanks for coming in. Adventures with Beth. We appreciate you having coming on in here tonight." And Pat Lil Films, deep stuff. Exactly. That's what you're gonna get. Who else is here? Who else showed up late here? Okay, Beth, I got your question here. For everyone else as well, questions will be asked this half hour. If you can put them in caps so I can pick them out from the other ones, that'd be awesome. And we will be posing those. Let me go back and make sure I haven't missed any earlier here. Let's see. Can show. Okay. And yeah, please send those coordinates to me to my email. That way I can maybe we can look at it for a little bit in hour 3. Let me see. And once again, where's the address? Okay, once again, this is an email address. You can send those coordinates to mrrobg@gmail.com. That would be awesome. We have about 15 seconds left coming back from break here. Okay, you sent it. Appreciate you. Okay, Paramar sent it to Facebook. Awesome. Awesome stuff. I'll take a look at it. We're coming back right about now. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. After hour number 2, back half of the second hour. We are back with our super awesome guests, Tillie and Artemaeus Treadwell. We're talking deep stuff. As I said before, if you don't believe me, hop in the archives. They're free. YouTube.com/at Spaced Out Radio as we get back into the conversation. And one question I had, Tillie, I wanted to start with was, being that after the awesome story you just told us, first of all, but being that you have this, and I feel this way, and I often ask people who have these medium sort of abilities or even sort of psychic abilities, because it feels like that you are open all the time. So being open all the time and then being receptive to things that you may not even want to tune into, but because you're open, you end up getting this noise or this information to come in. Does that at some point become overwhelming, especially with the story you told? I'd have to imagine if you're dealing with stuff that heavy and that deep all the time and you're just open to it, then maybe at some point it gets overwhelming. What would you say?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of burnout stories like that from other people, but I don't really experience that in the way that you are perhaps thinking. So for me, because I was born this way, all of the external, or maybe you could say internal information chatter that I'm getting from other types of people, it's just normal for me. And I do have periods of time where everything is just quiet and silent, but more often than not, it's kind of like a radio or something playing in the background for me. And I like
Or
it.
like being in a cafe.
Yeah, that's a great, I never thought of it. Perfect. Yeah. Yes, it's like being in a cafe, and I can hear everyone around me talking, and they're showing all of these different scenarios and things. And sometimes they'll tune into me and they'll approach me directly, and sometimes I will just, you could say, announce to the cafe that I need or I want someone to help me with something, and then people will, come gather to my table, and I love it. But what overwhelms me is being in too much close proximity to people, physical people here on the 3D, because dealing with all of the ego noise, and then a lot of the times the emotional violence or avoidance, and then sometimes also, like the physical violence or the threats of such, and all of the other things that come with that, that's where it's too much for me personally. And if you believe in auras and that we each have our own little bubble, it becomes too much for me sometimes to be out around either certain types of people or too many people in general for too long, because it seems to wear down my aura and I can get physically sick or physically run down. And that gets into something, honey, you could talk about the results from my healing adventure with, as I call her, Toki Toki.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
another thing that we had, experiment that we ran while we were at the conference, was that there was an energy healer there who was visiting from Maui, actually, which was pretty cool. And when I say energy healer, people have many different methods from which they do that. But essentially, one might describe it as an individual laying hands on somebody, and then through their energetic practice, they are realigning chakras, they are clearing blockages, they are doing a frequency type of medicine, you could call it. And so we did a scan of, let's see, the Paul, who was the scientist from Sound Living, said he wouldn't call it an aura, but the machine that he had was reading light emission from your fingertips, and then from that, it generated an image of what looks like an aura, essentially around a human figure, and it will indicate areas where you have gaps in your energetic field, basically, which would indicate a weakness. And so she did a scan of this prior to her healing session, and as Paul said, he was very concerned from what he saw because there were several gaps in her energetic output, indicating many health issues, essentially, as compared to mine, which he said was practically flawless, and he said one of the strongest he's ever seen. So there was a direct comparison to have between the two, and that her chakras were misaligned. But after a healing session with this energetic healer, who was definitely legitimate and very skilled at what she did, however she did it, the
She was
scan
the best I've
afterwards.
ever seen as far as any human healer goes.
Mhm. The scan afterwards showed a near complete realignment of her chakras, as well as many of the gaps filled in her, energetic emissions from the light emissions from her fingers. She still had a few, but there was a noticeable improvement from one scan to the other. So that kind of lends some credence to, what she's saying here as far as her health goes, and needing to be careful about how often she engages that because of her more fragile, we'll say, physical condition.
Yeah, it
Right.
makes sense when we talk about low frequency energies out there, and it's just really easy to take that on. And I could see where when you use the word sickness, how that could come into play. One thing I did want to see from Artemaeus, just if you could talk about an experience that you've had, something bananas in relation to the phenomena, either with Tillie or on your own, that you may have experienced at some point.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not sure, I can't remember which of these experiences I may have talked about on the last time that we spoke. So I apologize if there's any sort of repeat here, but I will say that there was one negative experience that I have had with paranormal entities or non-human people, and all of them, the others, have been, neutral to very, very positive. So this was an experience that I had in probably a twilight type sleep, or maybe sleep. I was sitting up in my bed, and to my left, I see a mirror on the wall. And I know, because I'm looking straight ahead, that there's nothing in front of the mirror, but from the corner of my eye, I can see that something moves inside the mirror. And for a lot of us, when you get that mismatch in information with your experience of reality, that if you're looking ahead and there's nothing ahead of you, but something moves in the mirror, that is not, we do not have a program for that in our minds. That means something is wrong. I don't know what, but already I'm in fight or flight response now, which generally for humans, when you encounter something that's unknown, you'll kick into that beta response, the beta brain waves, and it's fight, flight, freeze, one of those three. And so I freeze, but I know I probably should get up the balls to look over what's going on here. So I turn over to look at this mirror, and coming through the mirror head first is something incredibly large and dark, a shadow, what somebody might call a shadow person. And it starts, literally like the movie The Ring, peeling through this mirror. And it happened so fast that I didn't have any time to really react or respond. But immediately I felt like I was just like a floodgate. I became a channel for the frequency of pure terror, sheer horror. And I have never in my life felt that kind of just absolute panic and fear for my life, essentially. And because I've lived a pretty good life, I've never, despite having a Marine for a father, nothing touched this experience where the intuition that I got was that whatever this thing was, it had the ability to essentially turn on the pure frequency of horror and channel that through me. And I felt it viscerally in every cell of my body, and I literally started screaming, which is also something that I don't do. But this entity had the ability to trigger that within me and essentially put its hand up my butt and controlled me like a puppet, and it was nothing to this individual. So because I'd had some experience with lucid dreaming up to that point, I woke myself up and, my heart's pounding, I'm sweating, I'm shaking, and Tillie's just sound asleep next to me. So I, wake her up. I'm like, hey, this is your wheelhouse. I don't know what's going on here, but this can't have been good. And, she did her scanning of the environment. Well, I don't really see or hear anything, and I don't feel anything going on. So let me do some more investigation after you leave to go to work. So, I leave to go to work, and she realized immediately what had happened. And the day prior, she had been speaking with a colleague about this particular entity and what its reason for interacting with humanity was. And this entity didn't appreciate that at all. So, Tillie, being the equal opportunity empathy giver, said, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, and what can I do to fix this? And being a non-human person and dealing more on this, very tit for tat, egoless sort of exchange, they made a series of agreements. 1, 2, 3. These things will always be met, and these are the rules, and you never deviate from them unless we come back to the table and talk about it, and everybody's in agreement, all parties, good, and move on. Which is so very different from how people usually operate in relationships. It's, oh, well, I feel like violating this agreement because I think it would be best, any means to an end, essentially. The ends justify the means. Or, I'm hungry right now, so I'm just not going to do what I agreed to do because I'm, just thinking about me. That doesn't happen with non-human entities. It's a very mutual agreement. And so Tillie, operating on the vibration that she does, this individual was not able to reach her in that way, and so came for me essentially to deliver the message. How grateful I am! So that was that those agreements, 1, 2, 3 rules were made, and that was some years ago now that I had that experience. I have not had another run-in with that individual since, and like I said, all of my paranormal experiences up to this point have been very positive, and I attribute that entirely to having taken notes from Tillie, coaching from Tillie, and taking responsibility for my garbage and keeping my ego in check. You're never going to be able to get rid of it, and I don't think that's the point. It's simply to exercise humility and recognize that there are things much stronger than you, and to come at things with a very cooperative attitude goes a long way. And I would love to share more of the more happy paranormal experiences that I've had, but I know that we're going to be coming towards the end and we have questions to go through, so we'll just have to save it for our Halloween episode.
And if I may, that was his bigger fish moment, as I like to call it. But when it came to the experience, I would like to give you guys quickly my own experience as well of his experience. So when he says that he woke up and he woke me up, that's not what happened here in this realm. And I think that, like some other people who have had these types of experiences, he was put into a deeper sleep or a deeper trance, and he was being interacted with from there. Because I was awake. I was sitting up in bed. I had been for some time, and I was just sitting, with my tablet doing whatever. And all of a sudden, he's laying on his side, facing away from me, and he starts shaking and quivering. And then I hear him start to whimper. And then I hear him start to nearly scream. And by this point, I reached over and I started to shake him to try to wake him up. He like flips over onto his back. He sits bolt right up and he starts trying to tumble out of bed. And when he starts to turn around to look at me, his eyes are like half open. They look wild and he's got foam coming out of his mouth nearly. He's freaked out so badly. And when I get to call him, like, honey, it's okay. Talk to me. What's going on? And I still had to like grab his arm and shake him. So when he did finally come to, he crawled back into bed and he was like, oh my effing God, I have to tell you what just happened. But then it was like he snapped back into this reality and was able to talk to me. So at least from where I was sitting, the last part of his story wasn't true. And I think that what was going on there in part is that I can't say, okay, it's not what it seems in my understanding, but the rest is absolutely true from what I understand happened. And some people would think that, oh, this means you're going to go to war with this other non-human person. Not at all. I knew exactly at that moment what was going on, and I didn't understand that I had accidentally stepped on that person's toes. So when he went to work, I asked this person to come over at my invitation and talk to me. And this person physically came and manifested in the house, and we had a fantastic conversation by my standards. I learned a lot, and we parted as friends after we made our deal. And from that point on, Artemaeus had been suffering regular night terrors and whatnot. This was 2 years ago now that this experience happened. He's not had any other negative encounters at all, but he's also not had a single night terror.
Wow. And I need to ask you this because we have about 6 minutes for we go to the last break. Are you guys okay with staying about 15 minutes longer? Yep. Okay, I appreciate that.
I'm loving
we can use this last 6 minutes because I want to make sure we talk about the weird walk home. So if you guys could talk about the weird walk home, what the mission is there, and then what also is your goal as public speakers now at this point. What is your end goal if you could picture one?
Yeah, I was going to say, Tillie, you're welcome to speak, or I can kind of start molding the clay.
For me, love is the answer. That is all.
Yeah. In less words. Yeah, that's definitely it. I don't know. To come at it slightly more long-winded, essentially through my exposure to Tillie and having gone through what some people might call the hero's journey in some ways, overcoming the ego story and to mold it into something that serves the greater good, whatever that is. I'm not saying that, what we do is meant to be the truth or, the right way or the only way. I just know that for me, learning to be more objective, looking at things from, an empathetic perspective for all sides, taking myself out of the equation and just being able to look at that situation in a very neutral sort of way has made all the difference in essentially calming me down and not consistently being miserable and on edge. And I think being able to give that skill, that gift to anybody, they don't have to be psychic or intermediary or anything like that. It's literally the tale as old as time, just doing your inner work, taking responsibility for your corner of things, which is just you, essentially. Take responsibility for you. And love is the answer. Not taking everything so like war and serious. And I'm doing a terrible job of bringing all of this about right now, but it's just taking these as inspirational stories to be a better person, whatever that means, be more objective. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
or you could say, like, the Men in Black series, the whole purpose is to save the world, to save this world, even though it's just a marble in a locker somewhere in the vast multiverse. Yeah, that's really about it. And beyond anything else, we believe that love is the answer.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
love is definitely the answer. And I also, for better or for worse, have the same outlook on the saving the world part. It's the reason why I do my show, and the reason why I have a separate channel where the focus is just, things that benefit humanity and trying to kind of redirect our path. And it seems grandiose when you talk about an idea like that, like, hey, this one person can save the world. It's not, someone told me at some point that that's pie in the sky. And I said, you know what? Doesn't matter. I'm still going to do what I need to do to attempt to get us there. So regardless if it ends up being pie in the sky or not, it's not going to stop the mission and, the work that it takes to get there. So I applaud you guys for being out there, taking that extra step instead of just talking about it, actually going out there, going to these events and speaking about it and affecting the people that you are able to affect that are out there in the crowd. So
yeah,
really,
and I'll say, Rob, one thing to that point, the whole pie in the sky, one person can't change the world. And that's just it. We're looking at it, I think, the wrong direction. One person does not have to change the whole world. But if every one person changed themselves, the whole world would change. That's all you got to do is change yourself.
I love that. I really do love that. Let's talk about the books that you have written, Tillie. Talk to the audience about, let me bring that up so they can see that, and then talk about it. I want to make sure they know about it.
I'm glad you did. So my premiere volume is this. This is Weird Time. There we go. Exploring the mysteries of time and space. This was published by Zontar Press. I work with some, I think, pretty cool people. One of them being Tim Swartz. He is of Ancient Aliens fame and so many other neat shows, I think. And we put together this volume to talk about our own experiences with time slips and our theories surrounding time and dimension. And you can explore my mind in there a little bit, should you so like. And I talk about one of the strangest encounters that I've ever had with timelines, with my cat crawling out of years dried pavement right in front of my eyes. And there are a few videos out there of that type of thing, but I contend that glitches in the matrix are real, and we talk about them in here. Beyond that, I have written a few other pieces for, oh goodness, Malcolm Robinson over in the UK for the SPI. And I just finished up collaborating with Tim and friends again for a book on ghosts and apparitions that should be out hopefully within the next 6 months or so. And I have a new paranormal, you could say, semi-fiction series that I've begun to write with Tim and Zontar Press. We're wrapping up illustrations and formatting for that, and that should be out within the next 2 months. Unfortunately, it was pushed back because of my my health issues, getting a lot of my medical quirks worked out, but hopefully all will be well soon. I have a whole series coming up with that, some incredible illustrations from a beautiful artist that I work with and love dearly. And I think that's about it for now. Updates will be available on Facebook.
That's what I'm talking about, and that's perfect actually, because we're running right into the break right here. So Artemaeus and Tillie have agreed to stay for 15 minutes after the break, guys, to answer your questions. So your questions are definitely coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break here.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the
You're
needle.
listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
After hours.
All right, we're clear. See you guys in 5 minutes. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio after hour number 3, bringing our guests right back up on the screen here. And we have about 15 seconds left coming back from radio break here. And your questions are up next. Technical difficulty, 1 second here. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio after hour number 3. We're in the back half of the first half of the third hour. We're going to be going into questions next with our guests, Artemaeus and Tillie Treadwell, right here on the After Hours Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We're also going to get into some UFO and weird news and some Steve Stockton Tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries. Jam-packed hour coming up here. Jumping right on into it. First question that we have from Polly Roderman. She was asking, how do you make a difference between your inner voice and telepathy? And what is the best way to start learning, if you have any suggestions?
I mean, I have thoughts, but Tillie, you're kind of the expert on that, I would think. She's thinking real hard about it.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to articulate.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start and say a little bit for myself.
No, honey.
No.
No,
Oh.
I'm sorry. I need to handle this one.
Oh, okay. All right. You got it.
To answer your question, I'm not ever really entirely sure because I have very low ego content. And so that's what a lot of other people would say is that inner voice. And because I have so little of that, it blends, you could say, with other sources, and it's hard for me to know. As far as telepathy and whatnot, we don't tend to teach about how to do that. And at this junction in this case, neither one of us are in the position to help with that. And I do sincerely apologize, but we need to leave it at that.
That's pretty much exactly what I was gonna say.
I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you watching.
Definitely.
But I'm sorry that we can't be of more assistance.
Definitely. No problem. Let's get to Jose Sanchez asking, what does it mean when you're dreaming that you're walking and flying over a city at night, and as you walk faster, you gain altitude, then you lose altitude when you slow your walking pace down? Do you have you experienced that and have any idea what that might be?
Ooh, yeah, no, actually, I don't think I have anything on that one. Tillie, do you got thoughts?
Well, I need to read it again real quick.
Sure.
Okay. For me, what I seem to be picking up on this is that the more you get into the flow of something, your attitude is going to determine your altitude in this case, is what I seem to be getting. So the more you are doing, eating, drinking, thinking, feeling things that make you feel light and make you feel like you can fly, the more you're actually going to raise your vibration, and then eventually perhaps you will have that experience of flying over a city. And it could be via a hoverboard, it could be via some type of astral travel, or maybe this would be some type of after passing experience when you've left this form, but it would be like an upgrade, an energy upgrade, a reward in some sense. So I think that is yeah, that's my interpretation.
Yep. You're good with that one, Artemaeus?
Yeah, no, it sounds pretty solid to me. Like I said, the only time I can offer interpretations on dreams is when they relate perhaps more to ego, maybe more Freudian type therapy. So that one wasn't calling to me, and I figured it must be Tillie's wheelhouse.
Yeah, and to add to that, Jose Sanchez, I know what you mean, the experience you're talking about. I've had that feeling. I don't know what or how to even begin to explain that. But next question is coming up from Kim Jellin, who is asking, how did Artemis break away or disego?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Like I said, it's taken me the better part of a decade to do that. And it's multifaceted. There were a lot of things that I did, and many of them would include things that a good therapist would tell you to do, essentially. So it started by examining my something called attachment theory, and examining my childhood wounds based on the relationship that I had with my parents, the types of emotional baggage essentially that I got, and not being raised probably the most ideally. My parents did the best that they could, and no hard feelings there. But to disego starts with looking at where you're compensating because you've had trauma. So healing that trauma, and then once you're able to do that, when you finally have that inner child taken care of, reparented essentially, whether by a therapist or yourself acting as, the better parent at that point, you fulfill something that is consistently preoccupying you. You have given yourself the care and empathy, and now you're able to, look outward. So we're consistently preoccupied with that, looking for it in other relationships, looking for it through addictions, looking for it, consistently externally. But when you, like I said, when you satisfy that, take care of that, then you're able to come to sort of a stasis where you can, begin to educate yourself more on, let's say, mind-body meditations and experiences, getting in touch that way. And you then become, once you calm that nervous system, because from childhood you're consistently living in fight or flight. I don't care what anybody says that they're having a good day, you're probably still living in fight or flight because you haven't healed some of that real core trauma. Once you can get out of that, now you have the ability to look at things more objectively, and not that everything is good or bad, but you can see both sides of the coin. And that's what finally helps to get you out of that, constant ego story of just seeing things from your singular perspective. And your singular perspective is just a conglomeration of all the experiences and trauma that you've sustained. So until you pick apart that, all that you are at that point is just unresolved trauma and past experiences, which is just a small lens of what the world can be. So that's just kind of taste of how you can de-ego, or at least put it in check.
Man, awesome there. Let me see. Adventures with Beth is asking, can Tillie or anyone here tell what energies are around a person? I live on land with a long history, and I'm aware of much of it, but not all.
Yeah, I would say that you're picking up, from what I'm gathering from afar, I would say that you're picking up a fair amount, but that there's more presence within your actual home than what you may realize. And that's not anything negative, positive, it just is. I mean, human beings are, to a lot of other types of people, curious creatures. And so they like to watch from places like in the vents, under the couch, behind the couch, or under the bed, or from the pantry or whatever. And I think that this goes a lot this is a lot closer to home than just the land that you live on. I'm not seeing anyone that's attached to you directly. It's more just like a curiosity. And they're, from what I'm getting, they seem to be seeing you as a very neutral party, which I think is interesting, because I don't usually pick up on that. Usually there's some kind of strong association, but it seems like they find you extra fascinating because there's something very neutral about you. Huh.
Okay, that's
That's
very
all I'm getting right now, but it doesn't help that I'm kind of tired, to be honest.
very awesome. Matt Gutka is asking you, thank you, Artemaeus. The last time you were on the show, I asked you about a visitor in a night in between being awake and sleep. I did what you said, it helped. Okay, so thanking you for the first appearance. And
Awesome.
Kim Jellin is asking, how old was Tillie when she realized she was ... different?
That's a great question. I would say around maybe a year old, perhaps. It's really hard for me to put an exact stamp on that, because from the earliest time that I could understand any language whatsoever, my family and parents were saying that I was different. That I didn't look like anyone in the family. Um, Mannerisms, different vocalizations, and whatnot. So I guess that's just always been with me, to be totally transparent. But I appreciate your question, because that actually stumped me for a minute. I really had to stop and think.
Yes.
And, honey, I want to know what did you tell this guy?
As you were talking, I was trying to figure out what it was that I had said that might have helped him, and and if I'm recalling correctly, I'm probably not, because my memory is not that great, but I feel like I maybe said something to the effect of, be humble and say, like, hey, I don't want to fight. I recognize that you're the bigger fish here. Please, if there's anything that I can do to have a better relationship here, or I do not consent to being food anymore, like, let's find a different way. Take a more active role, but a cooperative role that you might get further than trying to fight something. And that's what's coming to mind. But like I said, I could be wrong. So
Yeah. All right. That's what's up. That's probably pretty dang close to what I would have told him, honestly. So I'm glad it helped.
sure.
No matter
Yeah.
who told it,
Mm-hmm.
I have the Jaquetta who's asking, is Tillie a star child?
I am whatever you dream me to be, baby.
Who knows?
All right. And then Night Drive, I Watch Baywatch is saying, what was the deal with the mirror? Which you were talking about earlier.
We
Yeah,
can't, I'm sorry.
I was going to say
answer that.
that's part of one of the three things, the rules that we're not allowed to engage further with. So yeah, that one has to remain a mystery. Sorry, bub.
Yeah, we're really sorry about that. But what we can tell you is that mirrors may not be what they are presented to be in this society, and I recommend using mirrors as sparingly as you possibly can, and treating them with great respect.
Okay, and we have, let's see, we have Woo Riders DG asking, does Tillie know how far advanced the military industrial complex private companies are from what the public sees technology-wise in years?
Yeah, I do. I believe, from what I've seen, from what I've been shown, and from what certain military sources have disclosed to me while trying to headhunt me, that the human military industrial complex is significantly farther ahead than what is presented to the public. Like, to the point where CERN is just the tip of the iceberg, to the point where I would really recommend looking into Project Looking Glass. I think I should probably leave it there for my own safety. If anything happens to me, I'm not suicidal. I like being here. I enjoy what I'm doing. I hope to be here for quite a while more.
Right.
So I don't drink. I don't do drugs, anything like that. So that out of the way, please look into Project Looking Glass, Project Bluebeam, and CERN, as well as, oh goodness, what is the name? Project Paperclip would be another good one. MK Ultra, and yes, Aleister Crowley and Walt Disney. If you go through that entire rabbit hole, I think it'll give you a pretty good idea of what the human governments are currently capable of on the deep layers. And I believe that there is even now technology available to the human governments that allows the human users to mimic non-human abilities such as shape-shifting and glamour, as well as timeline alignment. So whereas non-human people can do these things naturally, whether it's like a subconscious defense mechanism or it's purposeful for whatever other reason, it is my understanding and belief that now a lot of these things can be mimicked by human beings who have this technology, but it is not a true reflection of, you could say, God. So you could even get into transhumanism with this type of technology. And I would advise everyone to choose very carefully walking these timelines as we move forward together as a family, as individuals, and as a society.
Choose love. That's all I can say. Choose love, not war. That will separate your vibration and will determine what reality you will be living in.
Yes, if you have a choice, in my belief, the great divide is here, and I believe that it's going to continue until 2030. And you can choose between love and fear. If you choose love, you might see a lot greater integration with some really cool people, and you might be able to transcend naturally processes such as death and pain, hunger, etc. If you continue, however, to choose fear, well, you're choosing avoidance and anger and pain. And there are timelines for that, which are artificial and authentic in my understanding, but the choice is always yours. I personally suggest not focusing nearly so much on the governments and whatnot, whatever they may be doing, because at the end of the day, no one else can truly control in here, your inner world, you know? The kingdom of God is found within. And that is what some of our upcoming research to be published is going to be about. With that said, your adventure awaits.
Wow, deep. Love it. So we have, I guess, in addendum to that question, Laura Lobbs asked, would you include the Gateway Project on that list as well?
I think I would, actually. Yeah, I think I would, for those who are truly interested. But again, I recommend just using it as a brief psychological study and then moving on, cleaning up your own corner if you desire to choose love instead of fear.
Okay, and then Artemaeus, you were trying to remember what the question that was referring to from your previous visit.
Yes.
He chimed in and he said, "You told me to look into inner self, then correct that. If that didn't work, then talk to the visitor."
Bingo. Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that clarification. I'm very glad to hear that process bore good results for you.
And that's exactly what I would have recommended as a professional exorcist of sorts, too.
That is good stuff. Full
Yeah.
circle. Full circle.
Yeah.
You guys actually stayed for 30 instead of 15. I love it. Thanks for answering everyone's questions here tonight. And can you tell everybody once again where they can find you?
Yep, absolutely. So we have a YouTube channel. It's called The Weird Walk Home. And currently I am going through and making a series of video diaries, basically, called the Intermediary Diaries, where I talk about individual paranormal experiences that I've had since being with Tillie. And then I give my, what is the lesson, the takeaway from it, essentially, and perhaps how it really, changed my perception of reality from just average Joe to, maybe somebody who's not such an imbecile, so, an ego imbecile. But anyway, so we're doing that at the Weird Walk Home. And then, of course, you can always reach out directly to Tillie on Facebook at Tillie Treadwell, Tillie. And if you're going to be going to the Full Disclosure Now conference next year, which I think will also be in St. Pete again, or it may be in Sedona, the organizers are trying to figure that out. We will be speaking somewhere at that conference, wherever in the United States it will be held. And then, I believe that's pretty much it for the socials. And Tillie mentioned her books earlier, so I'm pretty sure that covers it. Unless, Tillie, you have any additions?
Yeah, there may be another event that we partner with, perhaps speak with at, oh goodness, I can't remember.
Contact in the Desert? Were you talking about Contact in the Desert?
No,
Okay.
oh my gosh, I'm tired. I'm sorry, guys. Anyways, February of next year, there might be another one that we speak at or partner with. We're still kind of working things out, but it's looking pretty promising. And aside from that, we're looking into hitting up Contact in the Desert next year, whether it's just as guests or something else. I don't know yet. And there are a few other events that are on our radar where we might just pop up and hopefully make a little bit of magic. I mean, if you want to join us, you are most welcome. And I think that covers it.
Yep.
Sounds good. If you could leave the audience with a positive message, we have about 1 minute left.
Oh, yeah. Positive message. Again, as Tillie said, love is the answer, I think. And really, all you need to do is focus on making yourself as the best version of yourself that you can be, and the rest will follow.
All right, sounds good. I'm totally glad to have you guys here. It's going to be awesome to watch you guys on your journey and watch you guys grow as well in this space. So we will be talking again soon. We already have the date set up. We may do something in between then too, who knows. But once again, pleasure having you guys in here. We will be doing this again. And thanks for staying. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you for having us. It was great.
All right, guys.
Take
care. All right, guys. That is Artemaeus and Tillie Treadwell. Once again, a fantastic show so far. And we still have half an hour to go. Can you believe that? We'll be doing some Steve Stockton Tells Untold Mispersonal Mysteries, because we're doing this a little backwards tonight. Normally, we would have run that first half of hour 3, but we're going to run it on the second half of hour 3. And then if we have time, we're going to squeeze in some UFO and weird news of the week. So make sure you stay. We got about 25 minutes left here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. So I would love to have you hang out. Make sure you don't go anywhere. Or like I said, if you do, just make sure you come right back. We'll be back right after the break here. All right, we are clear, guys. Clear. Let's see. Let me go ahead and get some things set up here for our next segment here. You guys been fantastic. Great questions tonight. Definitely want to thank our guests. This in Woo Riders DG. If you call this the Alabama hat one more time, this, sir, is an Atlanta Braves hat, sir. It's an Atlanta Braves hat. Let's see. Let's see here. I like that, Kitty Candywack. You stop lurking, you stop learning. It's all about learning. It's all about moving the needles. Kind of why, it's like, why get together? And why get together? Time is valuable, right? Time is money. So why get together if we're not going to walk away with some new information? Or, why get together if we're not moving the needle? Why get together if we're not trying to get to the answers? All the above. That's exactly what the purpose of this is. It's not just to, chat, even though I love chatting with everyone here. It's about steel sharpening steel. It's about figuring out the answers to the questions that we have and talking to individuals that can kind of open your mind up to the possibilities, right? And thought processes that you may not have run on your own, right? That's what it's all about. And it's beautiful when it's executed correctly. It's just beautiful. And I think it was a great conversation tonight. This will be one that you can look back on. Artemaeus was awesome on the first appearance as well. Tillie came in this time and it was just as awesome. So, yeah, totally satisfied with tonight. And yeah. Oh, you love the music, Kitty Catty Whack. Awesome stuff. I may get some new commercial break music potentially. I don't know. Right now we're good with what we have, but I may look at some things here. Let's see. Flat 6. Oh, Blue Cruise snuck in there. A little late there. I saw you, Blue Cruise. Excellent, knowledgeable guest tonight. Thank you, Artemaeus and Tillie and Mr. Rob G. We appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us tonight. Galactic Family Podcast says the music was on point. Appreciate it. We have Saturday music and Sunday music. Oh, and by the way, we run the show. Some people, if you're coming in for the first time, this right here where you're at right now is the After Hours radio show. We run this show Saturdays and Sundays from 8 p.m. Pacific until 11 p.m. Pacific. We also have on this channel, Spaced Out Radio, we have Dirty Filth, who does his cryptid cartoons Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific. We have Grantavius Max and Lee Strauss doing the UFO Max Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific. We have Element 115, which is Fridays, 8 p.m. Pacific. Then we also have Dave Scott conducting the Woo Train Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Pacific until midnight. So the point is 7 days a week, you can tune into this channel and find something going on. We'd love to see you back. Consider a subscribe and take a moment, everyone. If you can, we have about 1 minute left. Take a moment and step out, look right under your screen. There's the thumbs up button or the thumbs down button. Please hit one of the two. We would totally appreciate it. And this will let YouTube know that we're doing a decent job over here or we're not doing so good of a job. Either way, let us know. And yes, RIP to Ozzy Osbourne. And Malcolm Jamal Warner, a.k.a. Theo Huxtable. And even the Hulkster, man. Even though the second part of his life at post-wrestling was like, but shout out to Hulk Hogan, man. I used to be a Hulkamaniac back in the day. Preferably the thumbs up. I agree. Flat 6. We'd appreciate it. Coming back in about 4 seconds here. Hey, Monica. Hola, Robbie G and the Diggy Peeps. Appreciate you showing on up here tonight, Monica. Thanks for coming in. And let's go ahead and get to the show. Let me got a couple things I need to do real quick. That's and that's. All right, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, After Hours Radio Show, back half of hour number 3, last 20 minutes. Last call right here, as we want to thank our guests here tonight, Artemaeus and Tillie Treadwell, for staying with us over time and answering your questions. If you missed any of that conversation, jump in the archives, absolutely free, youtube.com/@spacedoutradio. We're going to go ahead and jump into some Steve Stockton Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries right about now.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries.
Jared Negrete. 13-year-old Jared Negrete was a Boy Scout who was on his first overnight backpacking trip. He was last seen on Friday, 19th of July, 1991 at about 6 p.m. when he fell behind his fellow scouts on a hike to the summit of the 11,500-foot Mount San Gorgonio in the San Bernardino National Forest, Southern California. Another group of hikers spotted Jared straggling behind and notified the scout troop leader at the mountain summit, but the leader, an experienced hiker, said he would pick up Jared on the way down. When the leader finally decided to descend the mountain, Jared was nowhere to be seen. As soon as the troop leader realized that Jared had disappeared, he accompanied his 5 other scouts back to the base camp and then hiked about 5 miles in the dark to get help. San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputies, along with search and rescue teams from as far as way as Sierra Madre and San Dimas, began searching a 130 square mile area of the San Gorgonio wilderness, a rocky, tree-lined terrain. Within 3 days, their search was focused on a 6 square mile area where a footprint believed to match one of Jared's high-top tennis shoes was found. Searchers also discovered beef jerky and candy wrappers believed to have been dropped by the scout, and most importantly, his camera was located. On the film roll were 12 pictures. Most of the photos were landscape scenes apparently taken before Jared went missing, but the final picture on the roll of film was a photograph of the scout's eyes and nose, taken with the aid of the camera's flash, possibly at night after he disappeared. Family members said it appeared Jared had pointed the camera at his face and snapped the picture. It seemed possible that the boy had lost the camera while sliding down a portion of the mountainside. At least 70 officers, some of whom were lifted by a helicopter into the forest, and horseback riders as well as helicopters with infrared were deployed. Over the next 2 weeks, as many as 3,000 people had logged 45,000 hours scouring 50 square miles of the San Bernardino National Forest from Angeles Oaks to Whitewater Canyon. Almost 30 years later, no other clues to Jared's disappearance have surfaced, and he remains missing. Casey Hathaway and the Bear. 3-year-old Casey Hathaway disappeared from his great-grandmother's backyard on January 25, 2019. Casey was playing with 2 other relatives in his great-grandmother's backyard the day he went missing. When he didn't come inside when the others did, his family started searching for him. After 45 minutes passed, his grandmother called 911. "He was walking in the woods back there and we can't find him," his great-grandmother told the 911 dispatcher. "The other ones came through the house but left him there and he walked off somewhere and we can't find him." Search and rescue teams from across the state immediately came together to brave the treacherous terrain and low temperatures, hoping to find Casey. 3 days later, rescuers were still combing the woods when they heard the missing 3-year-old boy call out for his mother. In the emergency room, Casey started talking about what happened in the woods. He said he had a friend that was a bear. The bear took care of him and kept him warm while he was lost in the woods. Casey goes on to say that the bear also fed him berries. Now, the local sheriff stated that there are bears in the woods of Craven County, North Carolina, but there's no evidence to prove one was with Casey. He goes on to say, all that matters is that something was there to comfort Casey during the 3 days he was missing. Carol Van Hulla. 3-year-old Carol Van Hulla went missing on June 28, 1959, in the Dickinson County picnic grounds in Michigan. The Van Hullas had 4 daughters and took them to the Dickinson County picnic grounds at Norway Lake for an afternoon of outdoor fun. Carol's mother was readying the group for dinner when she noticed Carol was missing. After a quick search, law enforcement was notified. A large-scale search was conducted using 500 searchers, a helicopter, and canines. Although the canines picked up on her scent, they would then lose it. About 13 hours into the search and rescue team could hear a faint cry from a child. In an area heavily laden with swamp and underbrush, authorities found Carol. The previous September, a 4-year-old boy had vanished under similar circumstances, but he was found dead of exposure 4 days after he went missing. Carol was taken to a hospital with scratches and signs of exposure. David Gonzalez. David Gonzalez disappeared while camping with his family in Fawnskin, California on July 31st, 2004. David asked his mother if he could have the truck keys. There was a box of cookies in the truck, and he wanted a treat. The vehicle was only 50 yards, 46 meters away, and his mother watched him as he walked to the parking lot near the Big Bear Lake campsite in Northern California's San Bernardino National Forest. She turned her back for a second, and when she looked around again, David was gone. David's mother reported that she heard no sound at all while her back was turned, though she did see a beige truck speeding out of the campground around the time that her son went missing. Since there were no signs of abduction, authorities did not pursue that lead. The cookies that David went to get were still in his family's locked vehicle, so he never made it to the truck. Rescue teams in San Bernardino County scoured the woods for David. They found no signs of struggle or of the boy. The search went on for 9 days, but rescuers never found him alive. In 2015, hikers stumbled upon David's remains about a mile from his family's campsite. Authorities chalked this up to a mountain lion attack, but how could a mountain lion have silently dragged a 9-year-old boy a mile without leaving any blood or signs of struggle? Surely David would have screamed or cried out, but nobody at the campground, including his mother, reported hearing or seeing anything. Ambrose Smith, gone for 24 hours. Ambrose Smith normally played happily at home in Newaygo County, Michigan. But on October the 8th, 2013, Ambrose was sitting in the lounge with her father when he briefly left the room, and upon his return, she was nowhere to be found. A massive search involving hundreds of volunteers was immediately activated, covering the entire surrounding area. It wasn't until the next day that Ambrose was found a few miles from her home. Strangely, she was discovered in a location that had been extensively searched the previous day. How the little girl had managed to traverse such a huge distance and evade the search teams who sprang into action so soon after her disappearance remains a complete mystery. Catherine Van Alst. 8-year-old Catherine Van Alst disappeared from Devil's Den State Park near Arkansas's Ozark National Forest when she and her family were camping. Catherine apparently was playing with her brothers when she wandered off and got lost. What makes Catherine's disappearance remarkable is she was found 6 days later. When found, she was wandering the woods and was eerily calm. University of Arkansas student Porter Chadwick was part of the search party that found Catherine. He told the Pittsburgh Press that when he found her, she walked stoically out of a cave and just said, "Here I am." Many other hikers have gotten lost in that part of the Ozarks and haven't been as lucky as Catherine. A grown woman was lost there for 17 days and died just 50 yards from the road. How did Catherine survive in the woods for 6 days? Did someone take her only to return her 6 days later? Or is there an explanation of this story that we simply can't comprehend? Either way, someone or something might just be lurking in Devil's Den. Larry Jeffrey. In 1966, a young boy by the name of Larry Jeffrey disappeared near the peak of 12,000-foot Mount Charleston in the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest, just a short drive from Las Vegas. The search began immediately after Jeffrey wandered away from his brothers, and within days, the National Guard and a team of bloodhounds had joined the search. When Jeffrey disappeared, he was wearing light clothing, and authorities were doubtful that he could survive the cold temperatures of the desert at night. Searchers found and lost the trail a few times, and they discovered evidence that Jeffrey had been eating insects and foraged berries along the way. Overall, around 1,000 people searched for 16 days, but never found him. One searcher said it was though Jeffrey had just walked into oblivion. Douglas Legg. On July 10, 1971, 8-year-old Douglas Legg was on a hike in the Adirondack Forest Santanoni Reserve when his uncle spotted poison ivy and told Douglas to put on long pants to protect himself. Douglas quickly headed back towards the family's cabin, which was a straight and short distance away, but he never returned. Unlike a lot of the kids who have gone missing in the national parks, Douglas was very familiar with these woods. His family owned the cabin where they were staying and described Douglas as a mini woodsman because they all hiked there together so often. Douglas' disappearance sparked one of the Southern Adirondacks' largest search and rescue missions, with more than 600 people searching the woods. But like David Gonzalez, Douglas left no trail. Unlike in the Gonzalez case, though, rescuers used dogs in their search. Some accounts describe dogs following Douglas' scent over a 30-mile trail through difficult terrain. How could a young child, even one experienced in the woods, have traveled alone for such a distance? The family became so desperate to find Douglas that they began suspecting each other and even close friends of abducting Douglas. But investigators were certain that Douglas had simply gotten lost. It's been nearly 50 years, and Douglas has never been found. Alfred Beilhartz. 5-year-old Alfred Beilhartz is the first recorded drowning in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park, though whether Alfred actually drowned is controversial. On July 2, 1938, Alfred had gone on a fishing trip with his parents and 10 older siblings for the Independence Day weekend. Alfred was with his family on a trail near Fall River when he fell behind the rest of them and vanished. A search began immediately and expanded to more than 100 civilian Conservation Corps members within 45 minutes, but there was barely any sign of Alfred anywhere. The authorities originally believed Alfred had fallen into the river. They dammed it up and dragged it for 6 miles, but didn't find any sign of him. Bloodhounds tracked Alfred's scent 500 feet uphill before they reached a fork in the trail and lost the scent. A couple hiking in another part of the park, 6 miles away and 2,500 to 3,000 feet higher in elevation than the spot Alfred disappeared from, reported hearing a cry and seeing a small boy resembling Alfred on a high ridge in a treacherous area called the Devil's Nest near the top of Mount Champlain. By the time investigators arrived there a day later, the boy was gone. An extensive 10-day search involving 150 volunteers turned up no indication of the child's whereabouts. Due to the passage of time since Alfred's disappearance, his case is no longer being investigated. He was never found. John Doe and his robot grandma. On October 1st, 2010, 3.5-year-old John Doe, as he's being reported, and his relatives were camping by a popular fly fishing location near Mount Shasta. Around 6 p.m., the child's parents realized their son had suddenly gone missing. According to Mr. Doe, his youngster was there 1 second and gone the next. They scoured the area he had last been seen in, complete panic-stricken horror. After hours of feverishly searching, the little boy still had not turned up. Now desperate, the distraught father decided to call local police deputies and United States Forest Service officers. Rescue personnel combed the forest well into the night, yet there was no sign of the toddler. 5 hours after John had disappeared, authorities found him laid down on the brush directly next to a trail that had been previously searched. He appeared to be in a dazed, semi-conscious state. Mr. and Mrs. Doe attributed this to exhaustion and were simply grateful their little one returned physically unharmed. Medical staff gave full clearance, so the freshly reunited family were permitted to return home. Everyone's lives quickly went back to normal, yet only a few weeks later, the small boy would share a disturbing tale about his terrifying ordeal. One day, little John's grandmother, Kathy, who he called Cappy, was playing with him. Suddenly, he looked towards her and said that he didn't like the other grandma, Cappy. Confused, she asked him what exactly he meant. Little John explained that while he was lost in the woods, he'd been taken deep inside a mountainside cave by a woman he thought was Grandma Cappy. She led him into a cool, dark, spider-infested room filled with motionless humanoid robots. Scattered across the floor were dusty purses, guns, and other various types of weapons. As John anxiously faced his grandmother, he noticed an eerie light radiating from her head. In this moment, he realized she was not his real granny. Grandma Cappy firmly instructed the boy to defecate on a piece of paper. When he refused, she became increasingly agitated and repeatedly requested him to do so. Eventually, the grandma look-alike succumbed to frustration and moved on to a different topic. Allegedly, she informed little John that he had been planted in his mother's womb and was actually from outer space. Shortly after this extraordinary account, she took the boy back outside to a thicket and advised him to wait for help. Upon hearing this disturbing story from her grandson, an outraged Grandma Kathy called her son and demanded to know what he was allowing her grandchildren to watch on television. Mr. Doe lamented that he had heard an identical recollection only a few days prior. Initially, the two chalked it up to an overactive imagination. Yet the more Grandma Kathy thought about it, the more little John's story perplexed her. What kind of TV show would feature some of the ludicrous topics that the boy was describing? Even more chilling was the idea that she might have some kind of doppelganger assuming her identity in order to abduct innocent victims. With those particular thoughts in mind, Kathy decided to share a haunting experience of her own. Only a year before, she had gone on a camping trip within close proximity to where little John's ordeal occurred. In the morning, she awoke face down in the dirt. Somehow, she had been inexplicably removed from the sleeping bag within her tent and transferred a short distance away. Upon rousing, she felt an intense pain at the base of her neck. 2 puncture wounds were present, and the surrounding skin was red and inflamed. Another friend who accompanied her on the excursion suffered a matching affliction. The pair originally attributed these injuries to a possible spider bite. Both Kathy and her travel companion became violently ill. In fact, she was so sick that she could not even muster the strength to pack her things. Her mind raced as she desperately tried to recall what happened mere hours ago. Only one thing surfaced: glowing red eyes. While she was drifting into slumber, she remembered seeing several creatures gazing through the darkness. At the time, she assumed they were produced by a herd of deer. Following this traumatizing outing, Kathy felt completely drained of her creativity and emotions. Several months would pass before she felt like her old self again. Admittedly, Grandma Cappy would have dismissed her episode had little John not come forward with his first-hand encounter. Now, listeners to this channel are no doubt familiar with the legends and lore pertaining to Mount Shasta that have existed throughout the centuries. We've done a video about it. The indigenous peoples of the area chronicled a fallen race of prehistoric giants that were said to inhabit the region. Others claim beings known as Lemurians used local caves as entrances to an underground crystalline city called Telos. Some allege a large energy vortex is present within the territory. In modern times, there are many UFO and Bigfoot sightings reported. Each year, though, 26,000 visitors flock to this revered mountain from countries across the globe. There have been an alarmingly high number of curious missing person cases within this picturesque terrain. While Little John Doe's incident seems unbelievable, it's important to consider the odd history and happenings afflicting this area. An open mind may be the only thing that will finally resolve this age-old mystery.
Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries. Once again, we got to thank Steve Stockton for keeping these stories out there, keeping the stories on the minds of many, because I can guarantee you, you probably haven't heard of any of these stories, yet the individuals that are missing have family members at home who think about this every single day. So shout out to Steve Stockton. You guys know you can go and subscribe to his page over on YouTube, which is Tales Untold, and then also Missing Persons Mysteries, right here on the After Hours Radio Show. I think we had a great conversation here tonight. Tillie and Artemaeus were actually excellent guests here. I love the way that they think, and, you know, getting out there and doing something to kind of spread the word or to move the needle is always something awesome, right? So getting out there to these events, which that's my resolution here for the year. Now that I feel like we have things kind of stable here on the After Hours Radio Show and what I'm doing over on my channel, which is the Social Dig, shameless plug, youtube.com/@MrRobG, like it shows right here on the screen. Would appreciate anyone coming over, subscribing to that channel where we have great conversations. But resolution is to get out there, be at some of these events, and kind of get into that whole circle, right? As talking to Steve Bassett last night, becoming the exopolitical activist, right? Because I feel like that's more of what my energy is anyway. Well, with that being said, we definitely want to thank our guests for tonight for staying late and answering your questions. Artemaeus and Tillie, shout out to you guys. We also want to thank Steve Stockton, Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries. We also want to thank the guy that you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Dog, because he's the man that rocks us out of each and every show, telling us to never say never again, because yes, the phenomena is real, which means anything and everything under that is possible. If you enjoyed the show tonight, make sure you go ahead and throw your horns up. We'd appreciate that. We also want to thank you guys listening on our terrestrial radio and digital platforms, when and wherever in the world you may be listening from. We appreciate you tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. What's that you ask? We own the night. Remember, the show is copyrighted Spaced Out Radio, SR Media Bridges Limited. It has been a pleasure once again serving you as your host. I'm Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show. And to all you space travelers out there, it's not a goodbye nor a farewell. However, you can best believe as we go off air for the night, we'll be back doing the same thing, same time, same place. So make sure you hit that notification bell. We'd love to see you back. Until next time, take care. All right, we are clear. We are clear. Great show, everybody. Appreciate you guys coming on in. We're going to go ahead and get ready to shut this thing down. believe Dave Scott has Lon Strickler in tomorrow, so make sure you're here for that. And then we'll be back here doing the same thing next weekend, so make sure you guys get ready, because when the weekend hits, you already know what time it is. Until next time, guys, have a great rest of your night. We want retribution. That's how we'll get out of here. Take care.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Yeah, we ran out of patience. Boil up with a cold hard hatred. I can feel the vibration. Beat in the streets, it's a new sensation. I wanna break faces on the pavement. I wanna make greatness look complacent. Adrenaline awakened, I can taste it. We can make an impact, grab and then take it. Like a disease, bring them to their knees. Take for their disease. Just like a weed, spread into the streets. Time to make them bleed. Cause we just want retribution. Let's go light up the darkness. Make true of an empty promise. Flip gods into wicked